This is Megaman Anniversary Collection, originally released in 2004 for PlayStation 2 and GameCube, then released in 2005 for the original Xbox. Naturally, we're looking at the Xbox version since that's what it says on the title card, and also it's the only version I have. And as far as I know, this may very well be the only Mega Man release to grace that big old Xbox, unlike its rival consoles which received some other Mega Man titles here and there along the way. Also, I only paid $20 for this thing back when it was brand spanking new, so there was some value for money in this package back in the day. Anyways, made to commemorate the 15th anniversary of Mega Man Anniversary Collection was a compilation of the first 8 main games in the classic series. That would be Mega Man 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. In addition to these 8 classic games, the collection also includes the 2 arcade games, Mega Man The Power Battles and Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters, which you'll need to unlock by defeating Needleman in Mega Man 3 and Junkman in Mega Man 7 respectively. Defeating certain other robot masters, as well as beating the various games themselves, will unlock picture galleries, remixed music tracks that you can listen to in the bonus screen, and even a couple of video bonuses. One featuring an old G4 segment with Mighty No. 9 creator Keiji Inafune, and the first episode of the old Mega Man NT Warrior animated series, which, I'll admit, the latter is a bit of a letdown. I was hoping for the old Mega Man cartoon to be included on here, just as it was in the PlayStation 2 version, but 2 videos is a nice consolation for Xbox owners who had to wait a little while longer for their Mega Wares, and the NT Warrior pilot was a nice little primer for the Battle Network series that was a thing for the time. Some other technical bits worth noting: you have some options to tweak gameplay, including volume control, customizing the screen size, and even choosing from one of 4 different button configurations, which is nice for those who find the default control setup to be lacking, which I don't, and it works fine for me. Also, something like this would have been nice for GameCube owners, but I'm not going there. You can also tweak the game's difficulty, alter the number of starting lives, or in the case of the first 6 games, enable the Navi mode, which was a feature from the Japanese-only Rockman Complete Works that we'll touch on a bit later. Mega Man Anniversary Collection allows you to save your progress for each game. Well, the main games at least. You complete a stage or you get a game over, the game automatically saves your progress. Now this is a nice little bit to ease up on the use of passwords, though you still have that option, but unfortunately you only have 1 save per game. So if you ever wanted to start a new game, you'll end up deleting whatever progress you had before. Now Mega Man's 2 through 7 still retain their password systems, so you could go that route if you have passwords laying around, or you just got them from GameFAQs and you want to skip a whole bunch of the game. Mega Man 8 on the other hand got the royal screwjob. Only 1 save as opposed to 3 from the original version. You know, 7 and 8 actually got a bit of a bum deal here, but let's hold off on that for now. So let's talk about the games themselves. You have the first 6 Mega Man games, which aren't actually emulated versions of the NES games as would be the case with the Legacy Collection, but rather stripped down versions of the Rockman Complete Works releases that graced Japanese PlayStations once upon a time. As such, the games featured here are based on the Rockman releases, with some Mega Man title screens and translations slapped on haphazardly for good measure. Hence why Mega Man 2 has no difficulty select, because Rockman 2 never did. Also, Mega Man 6 uses the Japanese intro tune during its opening cutscene, which is a cool tune but ends way too early, and as such the rest of the introduction plays in complete silence. And that's absolutely hilarious. And funny. And just quite sad, actually. Aside from some other minor differences, such as a zoomed-in resolution, which the screen size changing doesn't really help, along with some other audio anomalies such as muted sound channels, and especially with the first game, which sounds a bit off. The games play about as well as they did in the original PlayStation releases, which played about as well as they did in the NES originals. I do find the timing on the control to be slightly off at times, almost as though there's a slight delay between button press and execution, and I suppose that has to do with modern technology having its way or something. A funny thing, since I could pop in my NES carts into my FC twin clone system, hooked to a DVD recorder, hooked to the HD TV, and have no such control issues, but it's not that detrimental to the overall gameplay, for the most part. It's just a slight adjustment that has to be made, and it did throw me off a bit when I started to play this collection for the first time in years. On the plus side, they did add quick weapon access with the trigger button cycling through your available weapons, which is a nice little convenience that I wish made it over to the later Legacy collection, but no point to sour those grapes here. I think I already did that in the other video, so moving on. The first 6 games allowed you to play them in either their original form or approximate to it, or you can enable Navi mode, which added fancier meters, gave you helpful hints that you have no obligation to read whatsoever, fancier weapon screens for the first 3 games, and remixed music. In the case of the first 3 games, only a handful of stages are remixed while the rest is the same old 8-bit sound, and in the case of Top Man and Magnet Man from Mega Man 3, they're using Mega Man 7 tracks for some reason. But when it comes to Mega Man 4 through 6, all the music is remixed, and your mileage may vary in this regard, but some of the remix stuff is actually quite nice, especially in the latter games where they made something resembling an actual effort rather than just recycled tunes from the 2 arcade games. Other than the remix sound, Navi mode doesn't really add a whole lot and is only there to give novice players a bit of a helping hand if they really need it. Now, no doubt it seems like I'm spending more time talking about the NES releases rather than 7 and 8 in the arcade games, and that's probably for a good reason, because while Mega Man's 1 through 6 got something of a royal treatment, probably due to all the hard work having already been done in the Complete Works releases that this thing apes, Mega Man 7 and 8, on the other hand, got the short end of the stick as it were. Still fairly playable and still fairly well represented for the most part, but lacking the additional bits of the first 6 games. No Navi mode, no remixed tunes or anything like that, and also there are some other issues. First of all, Mega Man 8 is based on the PlayStation version and not the Saturn version that had a few extra bits added to it. No doubt a source of insufferable rage for certain Mega Man hardcore fans and stuff, but I've never played the Saturn version, so it's no big deal for me. No real nostalgia, could care less. Second off, as mentioned before, Mega Man 8 only allows 1 save, which is funny considering Mega Man 8 was the only game with its own save system and you could save up to 3 games there, and that's been completely excised from this release. As a note of comparison, the later Legacy Collection 2 retains 8's save system and doesn't try to implement its own outside of the save state setup, but that's another story that's already been told last year. Finally, the aforementioned control timing thing becomes apparent here with the dreaded snowboarding sequences, which I still don't care for, and playing them here is a hell of a lot worse than before. Mega Man 7 has its own little issues. The one notable thing that people like to bring up in regards to this iteration of the game is that there's no ending. You beat the game, you get credits rolling, and that's it. Apparently there were some issues trying to get the ending to work and the developers just gave up, I guess? I don't know, but for some reason you don't have an ending. Some of the special passwords don't work here either, so no special versus mode or starting the game with all 8 bosses selectable from the start. Not only that, but there's also bits of slowdown where there shouldn't be slowdown. Mega Man 7 on the SNES would occasionally sputter with slowdown, but never to the degree that this game does. It's still widely functional, of course, but this is perhaps not the ideal way to represent this 7th entry in the best possible light. As for the 2 bonus arcade titles, the Power Battles and the Power Fighters, they seem to play alright. Both games are essentially boss rushing sessions where you and another player, if you can find one, can fight various bosses from the various main games and get their weapons and stuff. There's not much to it, and after a while, it does start to feel a bit tedious, but they're still decent little time wasters. Probably doesn't make up for lack of certain titles people would have liked on here instead, but a nice little diversion to spice up the package, and it's always nice to see the more obscure stuff be featured in sets like this. Mega Man Anniversary Collection is a fine piece of business for its day. You had 8 classic Mega Man titles and 2 obscure arcade titles in one cheap, convenient package. And they're treated with as much care as was possible, with some hiccups along the way, but otherwise, still a quality little compilation. There are some nice little extras added to the pack, though nowhere near as extensive as what you get out of the more recent Mega Man Legacy Collection releases, which might seem a tad more desirable these days due to its slightly larger feature set and high-definition visuals, which this Anniversary Collection lacks. Still, what you're getting here is a nice little piece of Mega history and some fun games to boot, and the Xbox version is perhaps the ideal version to get due to having the best elements of both its counterparts. Anyway you go, it's a decent collection of Mega Man for decades old hardware, and a nice convenient way of playing the 2 arcade titles if you want to check those out.